Okay. So just I'll give a bit of a brief history in terms of our profession. So surveyors, actually, the first use of the term surveyor was actually found in ancient Egypt. So surveyors worked back in Egyptian times. They helped to map the land when the Nile would flood each year, and then when the floodwaters receded, they helped to map who or which particular farmer would have which particular parcel of land. So that's how surveying started, and then even probably up till 200 years ago, that was still the main role of surveyors. It was about mapping land, and it was about registering ownership. Now, when the Industrial Revolution happened and you saw more commercial buildings, so up until that point you had shops, sure, but typically a shop was the ground floor of someone's house. You didn't really have factory buildings. You'd have farms but no factories, and the concept of an office was still fairly abstract at that point. So when the Industrial Revolution happened, you started seeing much more in the way of development of commercial buildings. And then surveying evolved as well to meet the needs of the owners of these buildings. So at first, factories, offices, they would be developed by whoever it was who would one day occupy the building. But then they started realizing, okay, actually, we want to move to a larger factory, but I would like to hold on to this one and try and find a new tenant. And that's where surveying really started to change and become much more transactional, much more advisory in that regard as well. And that was really the birth of commercial surveying. Now, as an industry, surveying has been fairly slow to adapt to technological changes. My former boss used to take great pleasure in telling me about how the standard day would start. They'd all sit around in the mail room for 2 hours opening letters. And a number of my former colleagues, particularly the older ones, they would still, most of the work they did was pen and paper. They still liked to take measures, measuring rods. They hadn't moved on to perhaps some of the more, I say recent developments, but actually the likes of laser measures, computer-aided design. That's been around for a long time, but still there's been a reluctance, particularly among older surveyors, to properly embrace that. And we still see it today. I'd say, in terms of the use of technology, surveying is behind many of our sort of other sectors. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the reasons for this are. And I have to say as well, in Hong Kong, it seems to be a particular problem as well. I'd say Hong Kong perhaps hasn't fully embraced all the changes in the same way as some of the other parts of the world have. But going forward, I think technology has huge potential to severely disrupt our industry. So we've been looking at this a lot lately. So for appraisal, one of the things you're going to start seeing a lot more of, and you've started to see in other parts of the world, is automated valuation models. So these essentially what you would do, you'll see it on a lot of websites. You can get free ones done. You just put in your property address and details, and it gives you a rough value. Well, the automated valuation model has taken that a couple of steps further. So again, you give all the details about your property, and then within, say, 10 minutes, it can give you a fairly accurate valuation. So I've seen reports saying that they've managed to get the automated valuation models to within 95% accuracy. I'm not disputing that, and I think that certainly will start to happen more. But that technology is still catching up. It's still trying to fully incorporate all the subtleties that perhaps you need in order to appraise the value of a property. But that's going to severely change the way we value properties. And for investors, instead of bringing on board a firm of surveyors to do the valuation for them in say 2 weeks, if they could get a figure within 10 minutes and minimizing all these human errors, and that's got to be a major attraction. The other side of it is with agency. So we've seen the rise of virtual agents. So at the moment, these don't take on any physical form. It's entirely based online. But you can, I've seen some places where you go out and you have the virtual agent on your phone, and you can say, oh, hey, what did this property sell for next door? And the virtual agent will be equipped with all the transaction information that's available, everything that you're able to build into their database, and they can say, oh, this property sold last year for this price. Now, normally if you go and look around a property, whoever's showing you around should be able to tell you roughly what properties have sold for next door. But to have this service, to have someone who's got all that information on hand, every single transaction you've got records of, that's incredibly valuable. And these electronic agents, they're available 24/7. They have a 100% callback record. So really that's going to change massively how we buy and sell property. Now, does that mean the end of people like me, human surveyors? No, absolutely not, or I certainly hope not. I think there's still, real estate is very much relationship driven still, and I think always will be. So I think these technological changes will help to complement the industry, and they will help to improve our standards as well. They'll help us to minimize some of our errors. They'll help us to become more efficient. But as far as valuation goes, yes, a large part of valuation is scientific, but also valuation is still very much an art as well. And I'm not sure a computer model will ever be able to fully capture that. They might do, but my thoughts are that they won't. So I think there will always be a role for human surveyors, but certainly technology has enormous potential to change the industry as we know it.